Before, there was a first-class magician named Claude who was rumored to be strong enough to move the stars. At the age of 17, he became a teacher at the Royal Magic Academy and contributed greatly to magical studies. However, one day he disappeared. One day, Spica decides to try flying for the first time. She recites a spell to power her staff to lift her into the air as her friend Aria watches. With confidence, she jumps off the cliff, only to end up running down it since she failed the spell. She eventually trips and falls to the ground, and Aria laughs at her failure. She knew Spica was going to fail, but it was always amusing to see her try. Aria tells her to just quit, but Spica insists she can become a magician. She even has a foolproof plan, which is to study at the Royal Diane Academy where Claude teaches. She believes that if she studies there, she can become a first-class magician. Aria teases her since she does not even have any spells yet, which Spica argues against by saying that she has been training in flight spells every day. Aria thinks Spica holds Claude in too high regard. She reminds Spica that when the school was attacked, Claude had run away instead of protecting it. Spica feels insulted for being reminded of it because she truly looks up to Claude. Aria hugs her and shares that she's only worried about Spica. She believes Spica should hire a magic tutor because she's going to fail the entrance exams due to not knowing any spells. Spica cries because even if she wants a tutor, she does not have the money. Smiling, Aria decides to perform Aquarius magic as a demonstration so Spica can learn by example. Aria gives Spica a knowing smile, saying that Spica can always pay for the lessons with her body, which flusters her. Later, Spica practices flying again on a roof. She decides to learn by herself after all, but when she jumps, she ends up crashing to the ground as usual. Spica remembers Aria's words and realizes she really might fail since the entrance exam is less than a year away. She does not know anyone other than Aria who can do magic. She suddenly hears a voice complaining about not being able to sleep and sees a talking black cat. She wonders if she somehow gained the ability to understand animal speech. Even the cat is shocked that she understood him. The cat walks up to her and uses Sagittarius magic to send her high into the air, and she lands back down again. The cat tells her not to insult him because he was formerly a human magician. He explains that he was cursed into his current form but managed to retain some of his magic. Spica is amazed and bows to the cat, asking him to take her under his wing and teach her magic. The cat thinks she is insane because only magicians with talent can get into the school. He refuses, which causes Spica to grab and beg him to teach her, promising to do whatever he wants. The cat suddenly gets an evil glint in his eyes. Spica recognizes the glint and thinks the cat wants her to wear a swimsuit, which she decides to agree to. The cat denies that he wants that. He decides to take Spica under his wing because she is the first person who can understand him. Spica picks him up to introduce herself, but the cat jumps off and suggests they head to the capital to train. At the capital, the cat tells her to repeat a spell, which she does and learns is actually a request for beer. She ends up buying pints for the cat, who greedily drinks it all. In his drunken state, he tries inviting random ladies to join him, but the girls cannot understand him. Spica strangles him, reminding him of his promise to teach her magic. The cat promises to start teaching her properly, so she lets him go. Spica realizes that she really is the only one who understands him. Meanwhile, the cat is plotting a way so that Spica will give up and leave him alone. He tells Spica that he has one more request, then they can begin training. He brings her to a giant library. He tells her that the library has everything, even the legendary book called Providence, which is impossible to find. He wants Spica to look for the book and study it because it contains a spell that can break his curse. He admits that he does not know which part of the library holds the book, so she needs to search all the magical texts available. Spica thinks it is impossible since the library is huge, but the cat insists that she needs to find it within a month without his help. He would help if he could, but then he touches a book, which triggers an alarm. He explains that non-humans are not allowed to touch the books. The guard comes running toward the cat, recognizing it instantly, so the cat has to run away but wishes Spica luck. She decides to do it, and the cat watches her from a high area, confident that Spica will not be able to find the book. You never want an apprentice to begin with. As he walks, he sees a poster about Claude going missing. He then hears Spica cry out and looks to see that she has grown cat ears and a tail from reading a grimoire about cat transformation spells. That is not the only grimoire she activates. She ends up activating a bunch that causes havoc around the library. Eventually, she gets tired for the day and decides to call it quits for now. The cat studies her, predicting that she will only last 3 days. He is proven wrong when more days pass and Spica continues to dutifully visit the library looking for the book. Almost a month passes and Providence has yet to be found. One late afternoon, the cat finds Spica studying a book about ancient runes. She reasons that she considered the book might be written in an ancient language, so she decided to study so she would not miss it. The cat is impressed because Spica did not seem like the studious type. Spica admits to not really liking reading, but magic is interesting to her, and reading the books makes her want to learn more. The cat sighs and admits that he underestimated Spica. However, since the ending bell is already chiming, it means that her time to search is already over. Spica begs to be given more time, which prompts the cat to ask why she is so fixated on attending Diana. Spica admits that she hopes to become like Claude. The cat asks why she feels that way even though people call Claude a coward. Spica tells the cat that she thinks it is only a rumor. She recalls her experience with Claude. During the incident with the cultists 2 years ago, she happened to be there and nearly lost her life. Just as she was about to give up hope, Claude appeared and defeated the beast that was about to end her. Since then, she has always admired him. She tells the cat that she hopes to become the type of magician who can put her life on the line to save others. The cat scoffs at her story, saying there is no point in saving strangers. He tells Spica they should give up for the day and begins walking off. Just then, Spica notices something on the mother book at the center of the library. The cat asks what she noticed, and she says there are runes on the cover. She identifies each one and even reads the combined meaning, which unlocks the book. It opens a pathway, and the cat feels that Providence is inside, so they both enter the book and run straight ahead. They end up in a hall with a dazzling ceiling, and the cat thinks that all the books in the pocket dimension are forbidden texts not accessible to other magicians. Suddenly, a runestone begins speaking, claiming to be Providence. Spica is shocked that it can talk, and it shares that it knows her name and is familiar with the curse affecting the cat. Providence says that the curse is karmic, and that it is a forbidden spell that transfers the soul of another being. It points out that Spica has rebirth magic that can help the cat, which surprises her. Seeing that she is not aware of her abilities, Providence tells her that she heals fast for a human, which is an indicator that she possesses special magic. Her expression turns proud and hopeful, and the cat realizes that there is something special about her since she is also the only one who can understand him. The cat smiles because this is his chance to break free from his curse. Spica asks for instructions on how to break the curse, but then gets flustered when Providence tells her to kiss the cat. She panics because it will be her first kiss, and she does not want to lose it to him. As she continues to get embarrassed about giving the cat a kiss on the lips, Providence corrects her and says that she actually has to kiss his behind, which grosses out both Spica and the cat. Providence ignores them and continues to explain how kissing that way is the best method to transfer magic. Spica and the cat continue to panic over the method when suddenly the guard comes through the pocket dimension. Spica is about to apologize for trespassing, but the guard collapses and tells them that the library is under attack. Suddenly, an Orthrus, a magical creature controlled by the cult, bursts through the pocket dimension. They begin running from the beast, hoping to stay alive long enough until the royal army arrives. Spica ends up hanging onto the cat, who tries floating away using magic, but she is too heavy and he has a hard time controlling his magic. It becomes clear they need to fight it. At first, the cat decides to leave it to Spica, but Spica begs him not to leave her. The cat then decides to let Spica kiss him, reasoning that if he becomes human, he should be able to defeat the Orthrus. They begin arguing because Spica refuses to do something so embarrassing or disgusting. Seeing that Spica is resisting so strongly, he decides to call her a coward and someone who cannot achieve her dream due to her weak resolve. She suddenly regrets her hesitation and is about to act, but the Orthrus suddenly appears and hurls magic at her. Just as she thinks she is meeting her end, she believes she sees Claude step in front of her to defend her, but it turns out to be the cat. The cat tells her to start running, and before the Orthrus launches another attack, he uses his magic to blow her away from danger. Landing on the ground, Spica feels worthless again, but she steels herself since she decided to become a magician to protect people. She runs toward the burning building and scoops up the cat. As the Orthrus begins another attack, she kisses the cat, and suddenly Claude appears, no longer in his cursed cat form. Spica is shocked at the true identity of the cat, and Claude unleashes powerful ice magic to defeat the Orthrus. With the beast finally down, he begins descending to the ground with Spica, aware that the cultists are no longer in the area. Spica has a hard time coming to terms with the fact that the cat who bossed her around the entire time was actually Claude. Because of his rude personality, her perfect image of Claude is now ruined. Then she suddenly remembers that she kissed him, but Claude pinches her cheeks in annoyance. He then bids her goodbye since he no longer needs her, but suddenly he transforms back into a cat. Spica takes the opportunity to get back at him by pretending to leave, while Claude begs her to stay. He floats back to where Providence is and demands an explanation. Providence explains that Spica needs to be at the same level as Claude in order to fully lift the curse. Since their interests now align, he decides to agree to train Spica. Spica begins to doubt herself, but Claude swears he can make her a first-class magician like himself and insists that she start calling him teacher. He even insists on getting his job back at the academy, not aware that he is about to meet many interesting students ahead. In Spica's dream, she sees Claude, who asks her for a favor. Suddenly, he turns into a black cat and asks Spica to kiss his behind. Spica wakes up in shock, relieved it was only a nightmare, but that reality crashes in as she sees Claude by her window as a cat. Spica tries to recover from her dream so she can join him for training. Claude starts her first day of training and asks Spica what is needed to use magic. Spica nervously answers that you need a heart full of dreams, which earns her a disgusted look from Claude. Claude explains that the important thing is magical affinity. He explains that everyone is born with an affinity for certain types of magic, and they cannot learn magic outside of their affinity. Spica suddenly realizes that the reason she cannot fly is because she does not have the affinity. She asks what is affiliated with Virgo and learns that Virgo is a sign ruled by Demeter, the goddess of fertility. This means Spica should be able to use plant magic. Spica becomes amazed when Claude explains how far her magic can go. She then learns that rebirth magic does not have a specific category. Spica feels special and considers focusing on rebirth magic, but Claude advises her not to consider it yet, reminding her it needs to be kept a secret. He wants to see how far she has progressed in controlling her magic, so he advises her to make a sprout grow. Spica pulls out her wand, and Claude reminds her of the use of a wand. Meanwhile, chanting is what activates the spell. He instructs her to picture how the plant will sprout because a clearer image will determine the output of magic. Spica starts chanting and her magic is released. The plant grows exceptionally big and she celebrates because this is her first spell. However, Claude is not too pleased since it shows poor control. He declares that he needs to make her a first-class magician so she can eventually break his curse. Spica feels a bit hurt since she was hoping to get praised. In her mind, she feels the perfect image of Claude begin to crack. Claude then asks her if she stopped the magic, which confuses her. Before Spica can answer, a branch coils around her and lifts her into the air. Claude does not seem to care too much and tells her to redo the spell. After an entire day of training, Claude is actually surprised. Spica is tangled up in her spell as he comments that Spica has very poor magical control. After finally getting saved, she comes to the realization that she has no talent. She pales because this means her chances of getting into Diana are low. Suddenly, one of her siblings calls her because their mother has a concern. Spica heads to the farm to find her mother with a broken leg. Because of her injury, she will not be able to help with harvesting the orchard, so Spica needs to do it. Spica worries about her entrance exams, but Claude suggests that she use magic to do the harvesting, so she can train at the same time. Claude adds that this will help pay from her entrance exam fee. Since she seems to agree with his reasoning, he tells her that for the next 6 months, farming will be her training. Spica wonders if that is enough to help her pass, and Claude says that it is entirely up to her. She decides to cast an anima spell to help with the harvesting, but her control is still off and she ends up crushing one of the oranges. However, she notices that her control has improved. Claude explains that it is mainly because she can imagine the orange trees more clearly, and Spica realizes that because she is familiar with the oranges, her visualization is better, which helps her control her magic. She begins feeling confident that she can train this way as Claude happily eats the damaged fruit. So Spica decides to put all her effort into using her magic to help out on her family farm. Her family specializes in cultivating oranges, and the navel oranges are ripe for picking. She uses magic to try harvesting, but she often still ends up crushing the fruits by accident. Next, she tries pruning, but instead of using shears, she uses magic to adjust the length of the branches. Then comes the harvesting of the blood oranges, but before she can do that, she needs a lot of preparation, such as pest control, fending off birds, and weather protection, all assisted with magic. She reflects on her life so far and admits that it is exhausting every single day, but she sees the fruits of her labor and how much sweeter the oranges are. The days are also spent training her stamina by running, and the evenings are spent studying. 6 months pass like that, and it is finally the day before the exams. With amazing precision, she manages to cast anima without mistakes and is even able to harvest the oranges by using the branches to help cut the fruit off the trees. In no time at all, boxes of oranges are filled to the brim. Spica feels like she managed to do everything she could, and Claude and her mother agree. Her mother is proud of her since she managed to harvest everything in just half a day by herself. To her, Spica is a first-class farmer. Spica tears up and promises to grow the best oranges ever before correcting herself on her goal. She shakes and wonders if mastering just one spell is enough to get her into the academy. Claude admits he isn't sure since the nature of the exam changes every year. He tells her luck plays a role as well. The next day, on the way to the exam site, Arya makes fun of Spica for only knowing magic to make plants grow. Spica feels a little irritated at Arya, so she tells her that if she passes and Arya fails, she will make sure to laugh hard at her. In truth, Spica is extremely nervous. She's a little worried that Claude is not with her, and she notices that her bag even feels like it is weighing her down. They get on a carriage to take them to the exam site, and Spica expresses her worry since everyone around them looks really powerful. Arya is confident that she is the strongest, so she remains relaxed. After a while, Arya and Spica notice that they are moving farther away from the academy. Suddenly, a piece of the cliff begins falling toward them, and everyone's shocked as the carriage shakes. Everyone begins panicking because this means they might not make it to the exam site, but Spica is stunned when a giant stone golem forms in front of them. The golem then slams the ground next to the carriage, propelling it off the ground and sending it crashing down. Spica is confused about what is happening, and Claude finally reveals himself to have tied along inside her backpack. He explains that the golem is most likely being controlled by a magician. Several students begin fleeing the scene, and Claude notices that it seems to be targeting the students. Arya suddenly steps in front of the golem, insulting it for getting in the way of their exam. Using her Aquarius magic, she casts a Hydra cannon, causing it to be pulverized. Claude is impressed with her skills and explains that Arya's magic can control water and its properties. He acknowledges that Arya is probably one of the most talented magicians taking the exams this year, but he knows that the fight is far from over. Suddenly, the golem begins reconstructing itself. Claude reminds Spica that she already read about golems in the library, so she should know about their weakness. Spica does remember facing one in the library and learning that it should have a core somewhere that acts as a heart. She studies it as the stones begin to gather and notices that there is a stone with the word Ameth written on it. She remembers that those are the words needed to create the golem, and if you remove the first E in the word, the golem will turn back into clay. She decides she needs to tell Arya what she knows, but Claude stops her. Claude reminds her that she has been training with magic for the past 6 months, so she needs to be the one to defeat the stone golem. Spica thinks it is impossible, but Claude tells her that Arya is fighting in front of her right now. He reminds her that the reason she wants to become a first-class magician is to save people. That is enough for Spica to act. As Arya struggles to avoid the golem's attacks, Spica suddenly uses Anima to pull her away from the golem. Arya is shocked that Spica managed to save her, and Spica suddenly stands up. She tries to calm herself, but she cannot stop the shaking in her legs or the tears that prick her eyes. She looks at Arya and asks if she can fight beside her. Arya stands and asks if Spica can handle it because it is clear that she is frightened. Spica admits that she is scared, but she wants to be a magician who can protect everyone. Seeing her determination, Arya agrees to help her. Spica shares that all they need to do is erase the first letter on the golem's core. Arya is confused, and Spica reassures her that she can destroy the core. All Arya needs to do is make the golem fall apart again. Arya calmly tells her that she cannot do that anymore because she does not have enough mana to cast another large spell. The golem attacks them again, and they manage to dodge. The golem then prepares to attack the other students nearby. It launches a boulder onto the path leading down the mountain, effectively blocking everyone from escaping. Before any real damage can be done to the students, Spica runs toward the golem and scatters seeds, causing them to sprout and restrain the golem. Arya is shocked because she thought Spica was only using magic for her farming. Claude smiles because he knows the farm work trained her stamina and control. Even if Spica only knows Anima, she has mastered it to an exceptional degree. Arya then grows frustrated because to her, Spica is no longer cute and useless. Suddenly, the golem scatters itself to break free, allowing Spica to see the core again. Spica is about to destroy the core, but before she can, the golem suddenly throws its stones at her, forcing her to focus on protecting herself. She considers waiting for another opening, but the stones eventually break through. Before anything hits her, Arya casts Aqua Sphere to protect Spica. Arya teases her for trying to get the win for herself, then encourages Spica to end the fight. Spica uses her spell like a whip and is able to slice the core, separating the first letter E. Immediately, the golem begins disintegrating, and the rest of the students start cheering. Arya asks when Spica became so strong, but Spica credits Arya's support and says she was simply lucky today. But then a voice suddenly says that luck is not enough to defeat a golem. Justice, the vice principal, reveals himself and begins speaking to Spica. Spica becomes suspicious, thinking he might be responsible for the golem, but Claude recognizes him as the vice principal, which makes Spica pale. Justice introduces himself to the students, and they begin asking about the exam, which he reveals is already over. Claude hops off Spica's shoulder, already guessing that the golem was the test. The other students begin complaining because they would have fought it if they had known the golem was part of the exam. Justice explains that magic can be used for good or evil. Diana Academy wants to prioritize teaching magic to those with sound hearts, so the surprise test is used to measure their character. He commends Arya for being the first to stand against the golem and then praises Spica for her bravery despite only knowing one spell. He walks closer to both girls and tells them that they are accepted into Diana Academy. He then prepares to leave, telling both girls that he will see them again at Diana. Arya pouts, happy that she passed, but something still bothers her. Meanwhile, Spica is crying tears of joy. She pouts because Claude is not praising her again, but this time Claude actually does commend her, making her blush as she is reminded of the image of him she once had. Spica thinks about how messy her feelings toward Claude have become. She realizes that she only made it this far because of his guidance. She smiles, feeling reassured that Claude truly is an amazing magician. On another day, the principal, Jean, receives a letter from Claude. Since she passed the exam, Spica travels to Aradia's kingdom. The tunnel there leads to Diana Academy. The school is over 1,000 years old and was founded by the witch Selene. The middle school and high school divisions alone have 600 students. Spica admires the grand hall she is in. She is excited about everything, including the uniforms everyone is wearing. The fact that she is wearing the same one feels surreal to her. Beside her, Claude, now in his human form, reminds her to calm down. He also reminds her that their relationship as apprentice and master must remain a secret. Spica understands and replies that he also needs to make sure he doesn't run out of mana and turn back into a cat. She had to kiss his behind this morning, and she isn't really fond of the process needed to keep him human. Claude sincerely apologizes for their circumstances, but tells her they don't really have a choice since he cannot teach in his cursed form. He adds that they should both work hard toward their dream of making her a first-class magician. Spica accepts his hand, but feels she has agreed to a bad man's deal. He then tells her not to worry about the coven since he will personally talk to the headmistress about it. When Spica questions him about the coven, he learns that she doesn't know about it since she previously attended a normal school. Jean approaches them, pleased that Claude is already conversing with a student. He smiles at her and greets her politely, which surprises Spica. Jean speaks about how Claude is the current talk of the school since he had disappeared. She cheerfully adds that it's mostly people badmouthing him, making Spica think that Jean is some sort of sadist. Jean tells him to wait in her office until the final coven list announcement is made, but Claude tells her that he actually wants to speak to her about the coven. Before he leaves with Jean, he whispers to Spica not to cause any trouble. Spica observes the two witches, wondering if they are close. But she overhears Jean's tone turn mocking as she scolds Claude for disappearing for 2 years. Meanwhile, Claude makes a side comment about her true age, which he quickly takes back once his reinstatement is brought up. Spica realizes the two aren't as close after all. She feels like she missed her chance to learn what a coven is, but then doesn't have time to think because she hears a girl scream for help. She finds a female student stuck in a hole in the wall. The student states that she tripped and got stuck and desperately asks for Spica's help. Spica tries to pull her free, and she eventually succeeds. Spica introduces herself as a freshman and is shocked to learn that Io is in the same grade as her because, based on how developed she is, Spica assumed Io was older. Io hopes they are in the same coven, so Spica admits to her that she doesn't really know what a coven is. So Io explains that it's basically a class. However, unlike normal schools, a coven consists of 12 students and a single teacher who live and study together for 3 whole years. This makes Spica wonder if Claude intends to be the teacher in her coven. She outwardly wishes that the students are nice, and Io reassures her that Diana students may be serious but are usually kind people. Io invites her to check the coven list, and as they walk, Spica accidentally bumps into Astria, another student. Spica apologizes, but Astria takes her hand and insists that the blame is on him, then compliments Spica's beauty. At first, she feels giddy at being called beautiful, but when Astria starts flirting with Io, she realizes he's a big player. He then excuses himself when he spots another pretty student and begins tailing that person. Io realizes he must be the son of Justice, whom Spica remembers from her entrance test. Astria then grabs the student's hand, and Spica wonders if they should step in, but Io reassures her that she knows that student from middle school. She tells Spica that the student is actually a male magician named Castor. Castor tries to hit Astria for calling him Miss, though Astria manages to dodge. The two males seem hostile to one another, each demanding an apology and not willing to back down. Spica considers stepping in to stop a potential fight, but then everyone hears a voice from the chandelier. Suddenly, the woman on the chandelier lands between the two male students, telling them not to fight since it attracts attention, and no one is allowed to get more attention than her. Spica is in awe as the owner of the voice is a muscular female student named Leo. Castor is notably annoyed by her loud personality and readies his wand. Leo sees this and also readies her own wand, while Astria does the same. Io seems unbothered, and Spica panics because she thought Diana's students should be more level-headed than this. The first to cast a spell is Astria, who closes his eyes. Castor sees this as an insult and starts attacking him physically, but Astria manages to dodge everything due to his magic. Castor activates a spell of his own, creating a mirror image of himself that attacks Astria, who still blocks and dodges everything. Leo feels left out, so she uses her magic to transform her body into a beast folk-like form. She sends one of Castor's forms straight into the wall, which visibly makes his other body pale at the extent of her damage. Spica decides she must do her absolute best to avoid these people for the next 3 years. A random rock hits Spica, which instantly angers Io since she considers Spica her savior. She uses her magic to make herself bigger to finally put an end to the fighting. Leo is instantly amazed since she likes flashy, eye-catching magic, while the males are a bit taken aback by how unique all the females' magic is. Spica warns Io because people can see under her skirt. And out of embarrassment, Io hits her head on the ceiling and falls towards Spica. Before anything could happen, Claude appears and uses his magic so Io floats and does not crash onto Spica. Castor demands to know why Claude is there. He then tells all of them that they are part of his coven. Spica pales when she realizes that she'll be in a coven with them. During Claude's discussion with Jean, he had given her the gist of his situation so he could make sure Spica was in his coven. Jean accepted his request but warned him that the current world's view of him is not favorable. So she told him that teaching the students of his coven would be his test. She had chosen talented but rather eccentric students to join his coven. Aside from the ones he is personally escorting to the class, his other students include Capella, Iway, Mero, Kiran, Tarf, Hana, and lastly, Arya. Claude looks over his students from the back of the room. Part of his deal with Jean means ensuring all of them will graduate. He feels oddly refreshed at being able to teach again. However, he suddenly turns into a cat. The students notice he is missing, and Spica realizes that Claude had run out of mana. Claude tries asking Spica to undo the curse again, but Spica ends up running out of the classroom in tears since this is not how she imagined her first day. So the first day of Claude's coven ended in complete disaster as Claude was believed to be absent. The next morning, Spica wants to sleep in, so Io decides to carry her entire bed to school. She underestimates how tall she made herself, and Spica ends up hitting the top frame of the door. When Spica is finally ready, they greet one of the staff members in the dorm and head to the dining area, where Leo scolds them for interrupting her elegant tea time, though she drinks tea straight from the pot. When Spica enters Claude's room, the cleaning lady gets wind of their conversation and imagines the worst. In Claude's room, he tells Spica they need to bear with their routine until she becomes a first-class magician. So far, they learn that he turns into a cat by nightfall regardless of whether he used magic or not, and Spica can only use rebirth magic once a day. So he resolves to make her strong enough to break the curse even before she graduates. He explains that there will be rounds of tests before she is considered one. The only person who had passed all the tests happens to be himself, and Spica feels annoyed that she basically complimented him earlier. He tells Spica that she needs to at least aim to be the top in her class and warns her not to drop to the bottom 10% of her grade, since those magicians will be expelled. Once he is ready, he leaves the room and greets the cleaning lady, who accidentally calls him a monster because she thinks there's a secret relationship between him and Spica. Spica tries to cheer herself up since the threat of being expelled is always looming. Class begins and Spica has a hard time absorbing information since the teacher is discussing things too fast. She then sees a stream of drool and looks over to see Iway sleeping next to her. She tries to wake her up, but the teacher ends up scolding Spica instead. He asks Spica to state the formula he was just discussing. Spica panics since she didn't understand the lesson, but then Iway wakes up and answers it without any trouble. The teacher compliments her and warns Spica to pay more attention. Spica is about to compliment her but notices that Iway is back asleep. She wonders if she's the odd one since Iway seems to understand. Next is Claude's class, and he wants to get a feel for everyone's magical aptitude, so he tells the class that they will be given 30 minutes to catch lop-horned rabbits. He tells them that most ordinary people have trouble catching them, but as students of Diana, it shouldn't be a problem for them. He releases several onto the field, and at first, students like Arya and Spica feel confident that this test will be easier than the exam. Spica uses her anima spell, but the rabbit senses it and is able to dodge. Claude observes his students. He did not tell them that the rabbits can sense mana, making them really hard to catch for mages. Hana uses magic that affects the area to paralyze several rabbits. However, she also ends up affecting her classmates, which becomes a problem. Tarf uses his magic to create a barrier, trapping the rabbits close to him. Spica feels she can pull off the same strategy, but realizes anima is a lot slower than Tarf's magic. She begins to worry about getting expelled so much that she does not see a rabbit nearing her. At the end of class, Arya manages to catch 12 rabbits while Spica catches none. A rabbit had headbutted her, and she passed out during class. Claude tries to restrain his anger and tells Spica to meet him after class for supplementary lessons. Spica ends up heading to the room where Claude had instructed her to go, dreading the scolding ahead. She finally enters the room and sees Claude at the center. Claude explains that this is an observatory, then uses his magic to simulate the feeling of being in space. He then begins naming the stars before finally pointing toward a pair of stars called Spica. While it looks like a singular star, it is actually two stars orbiting around each other. Claude tells Spica that the stars are said to emit light even brighter than the sun. He says that even if one of the stars is dim, it can shine bright once the other is with it. Spica interprets it as Claude's way of encouraging her, as if he is telling her that everything will be fine as long as he is there to help her. Claude's ears turn red and Spica ends up laughing. She truthfully tells him that she needed to laugh and now feels better, though Claude feels a little insulted since it feels like he's being laughed at. She smiles at him, feeling encouraged again that she can become a great magician under him. Claude then tells her that for the rest of the evening, she will be training until she can catch 12 horned rabbits. One day, Claude is called to report his coven's progress. He tells Jean that all of his students are well-mannered and doing okay in class. However, Jean shares that other teachers have been complaining since Iwe tends to sleep during lectures. Leo does things that interrupt classes, Astria even hit on a female professor, and Io has been breaking school property. Claude clicks his tongue in annoyance as Jean continues to tell him that he has several other problematic students who have yet to show their true colors. She mentions a pair that are even nicknamed Pandora's Box. Claude only laughs at the description, which disappoints Jean. She then mentions that his biggest problem is Castor. He is known to be hot-headed and even causes trouble off-campus due to his temper. Jean also mentions that she is aware that Castor has been skipping Claude's classes specifically. Claude tries to explain that he wants his students to be free, but Jean reminds him that Castor will be expelled if he keeps being absent. If even one of his students gets expelled, Claude will lose his position in the academy. Later, Claude tells Spica about his situation because he needs her to drag Castor to class. Both of them wonder why Castor is skipping his class specifically, and Claude remembers that Castor was hostile toward him on the first day. Spica believes there must be a reason and points out that Claude is not very likable. Claude insists that all he has to do is prove he is a kind teacher. Io spots them talking and greets them. Claude asks if she has seen Castor anywhere. Io closes her eyes and tries to sense her surroundings. She then points down the hall, saying she hears fighting and believes Castor is there. When they reach the source of the noise, Castor has already knocked out another student. Castor gives them a heated look, which instantly scares Spica. Claude checks on the unconscious student and asks Castor why he had to do that. Castor explains that the student was being handsy with him, so he only fought back. Since he has a reason, Claude decides to let it slide but warns Castor that he will be expelled if he keeps fighting. Castor challenges Claude to expel him, but Claude gives him a kind smile and tells Castor that he will not be expelled because he will always have his support. He tries to convince Castor to attend his class. However, when Castor replies that he will attend only if Claude resigns, Claude's act begins to slip. Spica notices and tries to intervene, but Io gets to Castor first, repeatedly blocking his way and insisting that he attend class. During class, Castor actually shows up for Claude's field lesson. He tries to control his frustration as Claude explains about collecting mandrakes. Io expresses her joy that he attended, though Castor tells her it is only because she was incredibly annoying. As the class begins to search for herbs, Io gets annoyed that Castor does not seem to be helping her and Spica. Since he ignores her, Io lifts the tree he is leaning on, forcing him to stand and help Spica. As Io moves the tree away, Spica tries to make small talk with Castor, but then notices she got dirt on her skirt. Castor hands her a feminine handkerchief, and Spica begins to think that he is not so bad after all. She comments on how cute his hobby is, which irritates Castor. Before things can escalate, Claude approaches them, still acting like a gentle teacher. However, Castor sees right through him and tells him to stop pretending to be nice. Castor says that he hates dishonest people like Claude, and the only reason he came today was that Io dragged him to class. Claude's kind demeanor drops, and he begins speaking in a colder tone. Spica tries to remind him to stay kind, but Claude tells her that he needs to be honest when dealing with Castor. He then asks Castor why he despises him so much. Castor scoffs at the question, saying it is typical for Claude to forget something important. Claude presses him for an explanation, and Castor brings up the time Claude ran away from the cultists. Suddenly, Io calls out to them because she thinks she found the herb. She runs toward it but trips. Castor dives in to rescue her from falling into the lake, but Io activates her magic and reaches the other side safely. Unfortunately, Castor falls into the water and is swept away by the current. When he emerges, he is now Pollux, his twin sister. Pollux complains that her clothes are completely soaked, so she begins trying to remove them. Claude, along with Io and Spica, arrives to check on Castor, only to find Pollux in his place. Spica is confused and wonders if Geminis have the ability to switch genders, while Claude seems to recognize Pollux. Claude is momentarily speechless, and Pollux teases him for staring at her body. Claude quickly regains his composure and says he does not look at his students that way. Spica is still confused since Pollux seems completely different from Castor. Io explains that she is now Pollux, and Pollux introduces herself as Castor's twin sister who shares the same body. When a male touches them, Castor's personality appears, but if a female touches them, Pollux emerges. Spica wonders if this is unique to Geminis, but Pollux explains that they are a special case. She then decides to show Spica some Gemini magic. She removes the rest of her garments, causing Spica to panic and cover Claude's eyes. Pollux then uses light magic that makes Spica's uniform glow, and an exact replica appears on Pollux's body. However, she complains that the chest area is too tight, which makes Spica feel competitive as she tries to compare herself with her other female classmates. Claude brings them back on track and insists that Pollux should harvest the herb as well. Pollux reveals a copy of herself holding a bottled mandrake, and Claude suddenly notices that his sample herb is missing. Pollux laughs at his reaction and explains that she used refraction magic to trick him because she was annoyed that he stayed calm when he saw her. Claude realizes that she must have done it while he and Spica were distracted earlier. Spica looks at Pollux in amazement for managing to fool Claude. Pollux tries to use it as an excuse to skip class since she technically got the herb, but Claude denies her request and tells her to give the sample back. Pollux taunts him, saying he will have to force it out of her hands, but Claude refuses to harm any of his students. Pollux's expression suddenly turns cold as she accuses Claude of abandoning them before. Spica feels that their history runs deep and wonders what happened between Claude and the twins in the past. She remembers Arya mentioning the rumor about Claude abandoning students during the cultist attack, and it seems the twins are referring to that. To ease the tension, Io suggests they just enjoy gathering herbs together, and Spica agrees, trying to keep things calm. However, Pollux takes this as them siding with Claude. She apologizes for interrupting class, but insists that none of them bother her or Castor again. Spica tries to ask Claude about the truth behind the rumor, and he finally decides to share what happened that day. He remembers seeing Pollux back then when she was still a middle school student at Diana. Pollux was never part of his coven, but she clearly admired him. During the attack, Pollux and several other students tried to ask for his help, but Claude had run away from them. He doesn't tell them the rest of the story, saying that things will come to light eventually. For now, the shame of turning his back on students is a sin he must bear. He tells the two girls that he will search for Pollux since they are near the restricted area, instructing them to remain there and wait for him. Spica feels her heartbreak after learning that the rumor is true, but she isn't able to dwell on it because Io suddenly makes a sound, alerting her that someone in the forest is watching them. They wonder if it is Pollux, but they can't go after Claude since he told them to stay put. However, Spica realizes it seems like the person is hanging, so they quickly run in the direction to save whoever is there. As they run, they end up getting stuck on some strange sticky substance. They also realize that the person isn't real, but only shaped like a human. Pollux suddenly appears and notices that the girls seem to be trapped. She studies the fake human more closely and realizes it's a lure. As soon as she says that, a huge bug-like creature comes to life and begins attacking them. Spica tells Pollux to call Claude while she continues to fight until he arrives. Calling Claude for help does not sit right with Pollux, so she uses her Gemini magic to defeat the creature herself. Spica compliments her magic and wonders if Castor can do the same, though Pollux shares that Castor is actually bad with magic. Spica mentions that she also thinks the magic that allows them to switch between each other is amazing, which makes Pollux smile since she thinks so too. However, their conversation is cut short when one of the bugs bites Io's head. They realize they are surrounded and get ready to fend for themselves. Meanwhile, Claude is facing a similar situation as he was also attacked. He notices Pollux's light magic from afar and weighs his options. He may need to use greater magic to protect them, even if it means turning into a cat. Back with the girls, they desperately try to push back the bugs, but they are running out of their magical energy quickly. Io is the first to feel the effects and becomes unable to move. Pollux tries to save her and manages to trick one of the bugs into targeting her clone before blasting it away with her magic. She takes down one bug after another, fueled by her determination to become strong enough to protect everyone. It was a promise she and Castor made on the day of the attack. However, as the creatures continue to fall around her, Castor's voice in her head tells her to fall back because her mana reserves are depleting due to how recklessly she has been casting spells. She refuses since Spica and Io are still in danger. Pollux rushes toward them, using her magic to keep the creatures at bay, but eventually she runs out of mana, and even her clothes disappear. Just as a creature is about to strike, Claude arrives and cuts off its limbs. Pollux is angry that he showed up as she still sees him as a coward. Claude wraps his cloak around her and tells the girls that these are magical insects, monsters that mimic trees and use slime and lures to track humans. They are also called walk-in forests and have a history of attacking villages. More begin flying toward them, but Claude tells them that he will handle everything now. He prepares a greater magic spell and launches it into the air, causing the sky to light up. Pollux is reminded of the day she first enrolled at Diana and how she saw this very same magic back then. Since that moment, she had admired Claude and his abilities. After the ordeal, Claude tells the girls that he will check the area once more just to be safe and instructs them to stay where they are. He whispers to Spica that he is about to turn into a cat again soon. However, before he leaves, he addresses Pollux and Castor. He bows to them, apologizing for abandoning them that day and for the trauma it caused. He says he hopes they can one day find it in themselves to give him another chance to protect them. After saying this, he launches himself away in a gust of wind, only to return moments later in his cat form, perched on Spica's shoulder. Spica decides to tell Pollux that while Claude may have wronged them once, he's trying his best to make up for it. The tears in his robe are proof of how quickly he rushed in to save them. Still, Pollux struggles to let go of the past, but she expresses her desire to learn the truth about why he abandoned them that day. Since she wants to find that answer herself, she decides that she will start attending classes regularly, Claude smiles at this, but worry soon clouds his thoughts since magical insects are not supposed to exist in this area. Deep in the forest, members of the Black Serpents assess the damage Claude has caused to their insect scouts. However, their target this time is not Claude, but Spica. During a new day in class, the students prepare to use the herbs they gathered for potions. Some students notice that Castor has been attending class more often. Astrea in particular wants to see Castor transform into Pollux. Claude has a hard time keeping his students in check since every day in class is chaotic. Spica wants to try getting everyone to get along, so she suggests a hot pot party, which only earns her an annoyed look from Claude. Arya notices this, but refuses to say anything. After class, Spica attends special training with Claude. For their training, they are still catching the lot-horned rabbits, which Spica continues to struggle with. Claude reminds her that midterms are nearing, and Spica complains that her spell is the worst spell to use against the rabbits because it is too slow. However, Claude tells her to focus on Anima because she has yet to master it. He reasons that a mage can do a lot just by mastering one spell, and that it all depends on how creative the user is. Claude then mentions that he just said something amazing and that Spica should write it down. Spica asks Claude how she can come up with a new idea for Anima. Claude uses Arya as an example, noting that her spells focus on manipulating water, so the look of her magic depends entirely on her creativity. He suggests asking Arya for tips, but Spica refuses, saying that they are now enemies. She tells him that ever since they were kids, Arya always made it a goal to outdo her in everything. She hates how Arya always makes sure to rub it in her face afterward. Being reminded of their past makes Spica fume, but Claude tells her to cast her pride aside so she can pass. Spica remembers her goal. Right now, Pollux and Arya are both stronger than her, and she needs to surpass everyone. So she swallows her pride and asks Arya for help. Arya immediately acts smug and Spica is about to walk away, but Arya decides to agree to teach her on the condition that Spica has to bait again, but in a cuter dog-like manner. Spica finds the request disgusting, aware that Arya has a motive. However, compared to kissing Claude's behind, this is nothing. With absolutely no shame, she acts like a dog and asks Arya to teach her. Arya is shocked that Spica actually did it without hesitation, but eventually agrees to teach her. First, Arya has them soak in a warm bath for an hour. Arya claims it is important for activating the sympathetic nervous system, which results in more flexible and transformative magic. When Spica becomes amazed by the explanation, Arya admits that she was only joking. Spica becomes furious, and Arya explains that there really is no special trick. Aquarius magic gives her the ability to manipulate water, so all she does is repeatedly imprint images into her mind. Spica looks at Arya in amazement because it proves just how hard Arya has worked on her magic. She thanks Arya and promises to take her advice seriously. Arya then asks why Spica seems so determined these days. Spica explains that she wants to catch the rabbit because she was the only one who ended that lesson empty-handed. She then issues a challenge where both of them will compete to catch the most rabbits. She tells Spica to meet her at the back mountains for the challenge after 1 week, and the loser will become the winner's maid for a day. She angrily leaves the bath while Arya simply smiles as she watches her go. Since coming to school, Spica has spent most of her free time training with Claude, making Arya feel left out and bored. And so Spica spends the rest of the week focused entirely on training. On the day of the competition, Claude is a little puzzled by how asking Arya for advice somehow turned into a rivalry match. However, Spica tells him that she developed her own magic specifically for this. Arya is the first to move, using her magic to form a giant hand that captures 5 rabbits. Then Spica activates her Anima spell to create a catapult, which she uses to launch herself directly toward 1 rabbit. Claude and Arya are both baffled by the method, especially when Spica proudly shows off her catch while covered in injuries. Arya tells her that she is being reckless, but Spica argues that this is the only way she could think of to defeat Arya since she considers them rivals. Arya seems strangely happy to hear herself called a rival, and the two continue competing. In the end, Arya wins with 20 catches against Spica's 10, though she still praises Spica for doing extremely well. Arya then admits that she enjoyed today because Spica has not had much time for her lately. To her, watching Spica is one of her greatest joys. She offers Spica a hand to help her back to her feet, and Spica asks if Arya likes her. Arya happily confirms it, telling Spica that they should spend more time together. Claude watches them fondly, confident that they will continue motivating each other. Later, dressed as a maid, Spica is forced to serve Arya. A few days later, Claude runs away from his students in his cat form since several of them are chasing after him. A few days prior, Claude had approached Spica because it was almost time for them to pick the coven leader. Spica realized that the role was basically like a class president and wondered if she could do it, but Claude immediately told her she could not because it needed to be someone more responsible. He explained that there had once been an incident where a teacher carelessly chose a coven leader, which eventually caused the entire coven to fall apart. Spica thought about it for a moment but admitted that she did not know everyone well enough to suggest someone. She then asked if Claude already had someone in mind, but Claude answered that he still wanted to observe everyone. She suggested observing everyone tomorrow since it would be a holiday. Claude firmly refused because he wanted to spend his day off slacking in his room. Spica became annoyed by how lazy he was and insisted that they do it tomorrow. Though he hated the idea, Claude reluctantly agreed and instructed Spica to meet him in his room at 10 in the morning. The next day, it was already 11 and Claude impatiently waited for Spica, who had overslept. Since he was stuck in his cat form without her, he decided to search for her himself. As he walked, Mara spotted him and assumed he was just an ordinary cat. She picked Claude up and decided to name him Elizabeth while Claude struggled to escape her grasp. Mara brought him back to her room where she dressed him in a Victorian doll outfit. Claude was horrified and immediately ran out of the room, deciding that Mara cannot be the coven leader. Then he realized that while in his cat form, he could secretly observe how his students behaved. He headed toward a classroom where he found Kieran and Tarf. Kieran immediately called him a filthy cat, which instantly irritated Claude. To calm him down, Tarf picked him up and gently petted him. Tarf suggested that Claude was probably hungry, so Kieran gave him some leftovers, though the leftovers were more like a royal feast. Claude excitedly dug into the food as Tarf suggested keeping him as a dorm pet. Kieran found the idea amusing and decided to name Claude Big Balls of Taro. Claude instantly became furious and attacked Kieran before running away. He quickly decided that Kieran was also not suited to become the coven leader. Claude then ran toward what he thought was Spica's room and scratched at the door. However, it was actually Hannah's. Hannah immediately grabbed Claude and carried him inside. Claude was disturbed by how creepy Hannah's room looked. Hannah finally explained that she was researching poison magic and needed cat claws as an ingredient. As she reached for his paw, Claude immediately jumped out. Unfortunately, when he landed, he accidentally knocked over a potion that spilled all over him. Hannah quickly pulled him close and informed him that the potion was a pheromone enhancer and that she was not immune to its effects. Claude panicked and used his magic to create a gust of wind that blasted him away from her. Unfortunately, he soon ran into 4 more of his students, and because of the potion, all of them wanted him. This brings Claude to his current situation, running from his students in his cat form. Suddenly, he is stopped by Capella. Claude worries that Capella is also affected by the medicine, but to his surprise, she steps in front of him and scolds her classmates for scaring him. She then notices a strange, sweet scent coming from Claude. Realizing immediately that her classmates are victims of the potion, she declares that she will not allow herself to give in to it as well. Capella bites her lip to focus on the pain instead of the charm effect before activating her magic. Claude realizes that Capricorn magic can consume the effects of other people's magic. Capella gently pets Claude and tells him to come to her whenever he runs into trouble. At that moment, Claude decided she was perfect for the role. Meanwhile, Spica is still fast asleep in her room. So later that day, Claude calls Capella for a meeting and tells her that he wants her to become the coven leader. When he explains that he finds her serious, Iwe shares that serious is a forbidden word. Capella instantly snaps, loudly proclaiming that she's a bad girl and smashing all the nearby windows. Even so, Claude still chooses her as coven leader. On another day, Claude tells his class to practice combination magic. First up are Arya and Mero, who successfully created a giant sphere of water filled with fish. The class is amazed by their level of control and creativity. Mero excitedly explains that thanks to Arya, she can summon her friends even without nearby water. Unfortunately, one of the sharks suddenly bites her. Claude encourages the rest of the class to pair up and attempt their own combination magic. Spica panics while looking for a partner and notices Hannah standing alone. Hoping Hannah will accept, she nervously approaches her. Spica compliments Hannah's magic. She calls Hannah's magic fascinating, which oddly seems to trigger her. Hannah immediately refuses to partner with Spica and states that she plans to leave early. Spica becomes flustered, wondering what she could have possibly said wrong. Claude quickly tells the class to stay focused because their midterms are tomorrow and will take place inside a dangerous, magical labyrinth. He warns them that failing the exams will make advancing to the next grade difficult. He then tells everyone to give it their all and show the results of the 3 months they have spent training. Spica feels determined to prove how much she's grown during her first exams at Diana. After class, while the students are heading back to the dorms, Claude calls out to Spica. He informs her that they will not be doing any special training later and advises her to properly rest. Before leaving, he wishes her good luck, which surprises Spica. Feeling motivated, Spica calls out to him and boldly declares that she wants to become #1 in their coven. Claude only gives her an unimpressed look because she still does not sound reliable to him. He reminds her about the last holiday when she overslept instead of helping him, causing him to suffer through a terrible day in the dorms. He even mentions that Hannah nearly kissed him. Spica freezes after hearing that. Claude walks away feeling slightly pleased that Spica seems more dependable lately. Meanwhile, Spica cannot stop imagining Claude almost kissing Hannah. At this rate, she worries she will not be able to focus on the exams at all. Back in the dorms, Hana contacts someone to inform her mother that she plans to use Scorpio magic to secure the top spot during the midterms tomorrow. On the day of the exam, the coven travels together aboard an airship. Several of the students are rowdy as usual, while Capella struggles to keep everyone under control. Spica, meanwhile, looks completely drained, which worries Claude. Suddenly, a griffin appears beside their airship. Looking outside, the students are finally able to see the labyrinth as well. The airship lands nearby, and Claude explains that the creatures surrounding the area are called griffins. They are known to attack humans and are classified as dangerous pests. Claude explains that the exam will require them to retrieve gold from the griffin's nest, and their grades will be determined by how quickly they complete the task. Spica voices her concern, feeling that the exam is far too dangerous for students. In response, Claude asks if everyone is wearing the Hermes bracelets he distributed earlier. The students check their wrists, and Claude explains that the bracelets contain a built-in teleportation spell. However, if the bracelet activates, it automatically means failure. Claude warns his class that griffins are far more troublesome than the golems from the entrance exams. Before he can even finish his speech, Arya and Leo suddenly dash ahead, eager to finish first. Their complete disregard for his lecture irritates Claude. Tarf tells Kairon they should hurry as well, and Capella and Iwei begin moving toward the nest. Soon, the other students all rush toward the labyrinth. Spica braces herself for the exam, knowing she cannot afford to fail because she wants to make Claude proud. She runs toward one of the giant entrances to the nest, but a griffin immediately swoops toward her. In shock, she drops her wand and freezes. Luckily, Hana suddenly appears and uses her magic to scare the griffin away. Spica is surprised that Hana would bother helping her, but Hana claims she did not even notice Spica was there and only attacked because the griffin was blocking her path. She coldly advises Spica to drop out if she feels overwhelmed, which only frustrates Spica further. Meanwhile, Justice approaches Claude and informs him that several students have already withdrawn from the exam just moments after it started. Claude notes that there are 108 students participating and 18 have already failed. He comments that the true trick of the exam is understanding the nature of the labyrinth itself. Inside the nest, several students are being chased by griffin fledglings, but Leo uses her strengthening magic to lift one of the giant creatures overhead. The fledgling is stunned before Leo throws it out of the way. She transforms back to normal afterward, unwilling to waste more time in the first area. Leo then proudly asks the students she saved for praise, completely unaware that the fledglings she threw nearly crushed them in the process. The teachers watch the exam through magical projections and praise Leo's performance. Since she is considered one of the Academy's problem children, they assume she would struggle, but under Claude's guidance, she appears surprisingly capable. The instructors begin discussing who might finish first. Some believe it will be Leo, Persephone, or Arya. Claude quietly hopes that all of his students manage to pass because it would help erase the stigma surrounding his coven. Still, he silently grows worried because he cannot find Spica anywhere on the projections. After searching more carefully, he finally spots Spica and Hana at the very back, since they have not even entered the nest yet. As the two girls climb toward the entrance, they immediately begin blaming each other for being behind. Once inside, Hana marches forward, determined to make up for lost time, while Spica becomes fascinated by the massive nest around them and stares at everything in awe. Hana grows irritated by her behavior and insults her for acting distracted. Spica thinks Hana is being unusually harsh toward her. Spica immediately assumes Hana has feelings for Claude and might be jealous because she spends so much time around him. Fueled by emotion, Spica loudly declares that she refuses to lose to Hana. Hana becomes completely confused by the statement and starts chasing after her. The two soon arrive at a feeding area filled with fledglings and are instantly blocked by one of them. Hana sees it as nothing more than another nuisance and announces that she will move ahead without Spica. However, Spica insists that she plans to fight too. Hana mocks her and explains that griffin feathers are too thick for poison to pierce, meaning Spica's plant magic is even more useless in this environment. Feeling insulted, Spica quickly casts Anima and forms a giant bird cage out of branches, successfully trapping the fledgling. Unfortunately, she accidentally traps Hana inside the cage as well. After freeing Hana, the two continue deeper into the labyrinth, though Hana keeps telling Spica to stop slowing her down. They continue bickering until they notice that the next area is no longer made of hay like the previous section. Hana becomes impressed by the sheer size of the nest and compares it to the nests of sociable weavers. She explains that they are birds capable of working together for decades to build enormous communal nests. Because the nest becomes so massive, other creatures eventually begin living inside them as well. Hana believes the griffin's nest functions the same way and theorizes that other monsters probably inhabit the labyrinth too. Spica becomes genuinely impressed by Hana's knowledge. Suddenly, the girls hear a loud scream nearby. They rush toward the sound and discover several students being attacked by a completely different type of monster, confirming Hana's theory. Hana calmly activates her magic, creating a poisonous barrier around herself before walking forward. The monsters instinctively move away from her. Spica feels slightly annoyed but also develops a new sense of respect for Hana's intelligence. However, Hana suddenly rushes back towards Spica and hurriedly tells her to deal with the monsters head first. Spica looks closer and realizes the monsters are giant bugs. She immediately understands that Hana actually has a cute side because she is terrified of insects. Spica takes the opportunity to tease her, which eventually annoys Hana enough as she stubbornly tries to prove she is not scared at all. She casts poisonous rain over the bugs. However, she doesn't notice that it affects a much larger area than intended, and Spica ends up with burns from the poison, which horrifies Hana. The other students nearby also become wary of Hana's magic since they were also affected by the poison. They notice that she's from Pandora's Box Coven and are aware that everyone from that coven is considered dangerous to an extent. Spica notices that their words are affecting Hana, so she nervously tells Hana not to mind the others and that she was really amazing for taking down so many bugs in a single spell. However, Hana doesn't take the compliment kindly. Instead, she tells Spica to stay away from her as she doesn't want to get hurt. Claude watches the interaction from the projection, disappointed since it looked like the girls were progressing well until now. He worries that Spica and Hana are on the verge of failing. Meanwhile, Leo is almost out of magic and she feels like she can no longer move forward. Capella is facing a large horde of griffins but feels confident since Iwei is with her. However, when she turns toward Iwei, she finds Iwei ready to sleep inside the mouth of a griffin. Iwei begins dozing off and her bracelet activates before she slides into the mouth. It dawns on Capella that she needs to face the griffins alone now. Tarf is also paving a way for himself and Kiran to press forward. He makes sure to bring extra armor and other things he believes Kiran will need in case something dangerous happens to him. However, Kiran gets annoyed with Tarf's overprotectiveness and explodes. He complains that Tarf isn't even allowing him to properly take the exam. Kiran runs forward, desperate to prove himself, but he ends up running straight into a griffin's mouth and gets sent back immediately. Tarf is horrified and quickly decides to follow after him. Betelgeuse finds it hilarious that Claude's coven is starting to fall apart, while Claude feels his irritation steadily rising. With Spica, Hana, and a group of other students, they are suddenly faced with a swarm of griffins. The monsters immediately move to attack them, but Hana activates her magic, causing octopus tentacles made of poison to suddenly emerge from the ground and grab one of the griffins. She warns the other students not to go near her, otherwise they might also fall prey to her magic. Hana rushes forward since there's only a limited amount of time she can keep the spell active due to how much mana it drains. When she notices that the griffins are no longer paying attention to her, she looks back and sees Spica and the others struggling to fend the griffins off since they had decided to ignore Hana in favor of easier prey. Spica spots Hana ahead, but Hana decides to look away and continue pressing forward. In Hana's mind, she has already decided that her goal is to take first place with her magic. Rushing deeper into the labyrinth, she finally sees gold up ahead and feels confident she can pass the exam. However, before she can reach it, a variant of a griffin suddenly appears before her. She summons her octopus scorpion, daring the creature to even try attacking her. However, the griffin surprises her with a magical electric attack that pierces through her magic and instantly shatters it. With her defensive spell gone, Hana becomes vaguely aware that she cannot survive another direct attack. For a moment, she begins doubting her ability to win, but she quickly gets a hold of herself and tightens her grip on her wand, refusing to give up. A horrible memory resurfaces from when she was younger and accidentally poisoned one of her relatives. She had looked at Hana with fear, then called her a monster, and ever since then, Hana had avoided getting close to people out of fear of hurting them. Standing up and summoning the last of her power, she casts her strongest spell, Scorpion Emperor. She sends it toward the griffin, but the creature releases another shockwave to counter it, instantly pulverizing the spell. Hana is left speechless as she watches her magic fade apart before her eyes. She's just about to give up when she suddenly hears Spica casting a spell. Looking ahead, and Hana sees a thick wall of roots rising before her, blocking another electrical attack from the griffin. She immediately tries to demand that Spica leave her alone, but Spica only looks at her with annoyance. The two begin arguing again, but Spica suddenly tells Hana that she should be more honest and admit that she actually wants friends. Hana's eyes tremble as she blushes at being exposed so directly. Spica then tells her that they need to focus on defeating the griffin together, mentioning that she knows she cannot beat it alone. Hana still hesitates, worried that Spica might get hurt if she casts magic nearby. However, Spica grabs her hand and declares that she isn't scared. Spica then notices that the griffin suddenly stopped attacking them and is just staring from over the wall she made. Hana explains that the creature is likely observing them carefully since Spica uses plant magic, which doesn't conduct electricity very well. Spica encourages Hana to come up with a plan, which Hana manages to do almost instantly. She whispers the details to Spica, and once they agree, the girls immediately spring into action. Spica runs around the griffin, successfully drawing its attention. The griffin launches an attack at her, and Spica manages to cast Anima to defend herself. Since the griffin is focused entirely on Spica, Hana is able to attack one of its heads directly with poison magic. Spica celebrates the direct hit, but Claude, who is watching through the projection, already knows it won't be enough to take the griffin down. The griffin suddenly grins, and Hana realizes she still isn't strong enough to conjure poison powerful enough to finish it. The griffin sends a massive gust of wind toward them, slamming Spica violently into the wall. Helping her up, Hana quietly suggests that they hide for now. Hana manages to bring them to a cave, and she is surprised that Spica is still conscious. Spica feels relieved that her Hermes bracelet still hasn't activated. Hana blames herself for the failure of the plan, but Spica insists that it actually worked. They just need more poison. When Hana mentions they would need a dozen more attacks of that level to overcome the griffin, Spica suddenly tells her they just need to apply what Claude taught them yesterday. Spica believes that by combining their magic, they should be able to create a potent enough poison to defeat the griffin. She pulls out a plant bulb and suggests infusing both of their magic into it to create a new type of poisonous flower. Hana immediately worries about the spell's danger, recalling how she had poisoned someone. She warns Spica that she might get poisoned too, so she shouldn't be suggesting such dangerous tactics. However, Spica insists that she will be fine. She mentions that she is aware Hana is skilled enough for the spell. Spica says it took her an incredibly long time just to master Anima, so Hana must have put in even more effort to reach her current level. Spica's words visibly affect Hana as she silently debates whether she can really do it. Suddenly, the mutated griffin tears through their hiding spot, causing both girls to scramble. Hana finally asks Spica for the bulb. Spica holds it out, and together they attempt cross magic. Hana calms herself, convincing herself that she is not the same witch she was in the past. When she finishes casting, the bulb begins reacting to both of their mana. Spica quickly throws it toward the griffin's open mouth. After ingesting the bulb, a blossom suddenly sprouts from the creature's neck, which Hana and Spica instantly recognize as the poisonous flower. As it blooms, it gradually injects poison into the griffin's body, but the griffin still thrashes around violently. Hana notices that a single blossom isn't enough to take it down, so Spica decides to increase the number. She casts Anima again, this time targeting the blossom itself so it multiplies. Just as Spica predicted, the griffin eventually collapses from the overwhelming poison spreading through its body. Hana stares at the fallen creature in complete shock, but Spica smiles as if she knew they were amazing. For the first time, Hana smiles back and agrees. Meanwhile, some of their classmates are facing a similar enemy elsewhere in the labyrinth. Castor and Astrea have a hard time getting along due to Castor's refusal to work together. However, when Io accidentally falls onto Castor, it triggers Pollux to take over. Since Pollux is much more sociable and capable of working with others, she confidently promises the group that she can lead them to victory. Back with Spica and Hana, the two girls finally manage to reach the gold. Hana takes one of the coins so she can return, but notices that Spica seems unusually exhausted. Spica tells her that she only needs a little time to catch her breath and urges Hana to head out first. Though hesitant, Hana eventually decides to trust her. The truth is that she is already suffering from the backlash of the massive spell, and she doesn't want to hold Hana back any further. She collapses, unable to resist sleep. Outside the labyrinth, the sun is already beginning to set, and Claude hopes they can wait just a little longer. Back inside the nest, Spica slowly wakes up only to find Hana sitting right in front of her. Spica panics and tells Hana that they need to hurry, but Hana informs her that the exam is already over since their bracelets are glowing red. Hana quietly admits that she couldn't stand the thought of Spica collapsing because of her poison. However, Spica reassures her that it had nothing to do with the poison, though she now feels guilty for making them fail. Hana agrees, even mentioning that she had told her parents she would take first place, which only makes Spica feel even worse. However, Hana suddenly admits that she was only joking. The truth is that she only wanted first place to gain confidence in herself, but thanks to Spica, she ended up gaining something even more precious. Soon afterwards, Spica and Hana are escorted outside, where they reunite with Io and Arya. Arya tells Spica that Spica was too slow, even joking that Spica must have fallen asleep. Spica honestly confirms that she actually did, which greatly amuses Arya. Spica then learns that both girls passed, and Io credits Pollux for helping their group succeed. As for Arya, she explains that Mero had suggested becoming friends with the griffin instead. Mero then started singing, and somehow everybody's bodies, including the griffins, began dancing to the song. Arya spotted an opening during the chaos and blasted the creature with magic. Mero had been devastated that her new friend lost consciousness, but Arya says that's how they managed to secure the gold and pass the exam. Spica feels genuinely happy that her friends pass, but she still decides to report directly to Claude. The moment she spots him, she approaches and apologizes for failing despite talking so confidently about winning earlier. She admits that she'd have been so close but didn't expect cross magic to be so draining. She also confesses that she made many mistakes and knows she never would have beaten the griffin alone. Tears begin falling from her eyes as she finally allows herself to feel bitter about the failure. Claude slowly turns toward her and asks if she is crying. Spica's tears immediately stop when she realizes Claude doesn't even look particularly sympathetic. Claude tells her that while she certainly has many things to reflect on, her performance wasn't bad. He points out that although it had been difficult for her and Hana to work together, they still managed to pull off a flawless victory against the griffin. He tells Spica that she should be more proud of her progress. Spica feels relieved that despite the failure, Claude still acknowledges how much she has grown. From a distance, Justice notices that Claude seems far closer to his current coven than before. He had noticed it earlier when Claude genuinely looked frustrated over a student. Claude, though smiling faintly, warns Spica that she absolutely has to pass the finals. He turns around and tells her that he plans on becoming much stricter moving forward. After a moment, both he and Spica end up laughing together. The next day, Claude hands out the results of their exams, and as expected, Spica receives an F since she failed. Claude tells the students who passed that they should continue working harder if they want even better grades. Meanwhile, the 5 students from his coven who failed will be attending next week's winter magic training camp. He informs them that the camp will be held on the magic mountain where their founding witch, Celine, once trained. The training camp will last 3 days and 2 nights, and they will use the experience to improve their magic. Claude warns them that the camp is notoriously hellish, that students in previous years cried and even attempted to escape. However, Claude reassures them that no one will be running away under his watch. Spica already feels dread since the camp sounds horrible. Claude then adds that the students who passed also have the option of joining. After class, Arya teases Spica, saying she should join for the fun of it, but Spica immediately refuses. Spica then walks up to Hana and casually calls her by her first name, which visibly shocks Hana. Secretly, Hana feels happy hearing someone outside her family use her first name. Arya looks a little taken aback by their sudden familiarity, but Spica ignores it and invites Hana to go shopping with her after school. Hana stiffly agrees, even though she is secretly excited by the invitation. Io and Arya feel left out, so Spica decides to invite them too. Meanwhile, Hana finds herself at a loss as to how she is supposed to act. She genuinely wants to become friendlier with Spica, but she is painfully aware that she had said many harsh things to her before. Then Spica informs her that Io and Arya will also be joining them, which only makes Hana even more nervous. Back in her dorm room, Hana carefully looks through her wardrobe, wondering what people normally wear when hanging out with friends. She's barely spoken to Arya and Io before, but she wants to get along with everyone, especially Spica. When the 4 girls finally head into town together, Io suggests they grab something to eat first. Hana quietly checks what everyone else is wearing, feeling self-conscious. She notices Arya wearing something cute and frilly, the kind of outfit Hana feels she could never pull off herself. Arya notices Hana staring, so Hana hurriedly tries to explain that she's only looking at her clothes. Io tries making conversation by asking Hana if she also attended Diana's middle school division. Hana confirms it, but she struggles to continue the conversation afterward. Suddenly, Spica spots an ice cream shop and eagerly leads everyone toward it. Hana lags slightly behind the others, feeling overwhelmed and guilty because she cannot keep conversations flowing naturally. Lost in her thoughts, she jumps in surprise when she suddenly feels something cold press against her cheek. Spica laughs at Hana's cute reaction and offers her the ice cream cone. She explains that she wants Hana to look less serious all the time. Later, Arya spots a boutique and excitedly urges the girls inside. The store has a magical mirror that uses light magic to show customers how they would look in different outfits. Arya immediately pushes Spica in front of the mirror. Then she pushes Io forward, whose reflection wears a bunny girl costume. Finally, Arya shows Hana toward the mirror, wanting to see her dressed like a cute princess. All of them are surprised at the transformation because even Hana's face looks different. Spica tries to push Arya toward the mirror next, but Arya quickly slips away and insists they head to another shop. They visit a shop selling trendy wands, though none of them can afford to buy one. Afterward, they stop at another store that sells mandrake-flavored juice. To decide who has to drink it, they play rock, paper, scissors, and unfortunately, Hana loses. When the girls notice the sun beginning to set, they spot a black cat hiding in the bushes nearby. Arya tries coaxing it toward her, but the cat jumps directly into Hana's arms before cuddling against her chest. The girls notice how happy Hana looks while petting the cat, and she shyly admits that she has recently become fond of cats ever since she played with the black cat living in the dorms. At that moment, Spica suddenly realizes that the black cat Hana has been doting on is actually Claude. She also realizes that when Claude previously mentioned Hana almost kissing him, he had been referring to his cat form the entire time. Spica feels her face burn red from embarrassment for misunderstanding things so badly. Before heading home, Spica mentions she has one more place to go. She brings them to the Witch Hat World Tree, where they head toward the viewing deck. The girls stare in awe at the breathtaking scenery spread out before them. Spica smiles warmly and admits that she feels relieved seeing Hana genuinely having fun today. Arya and Io agree, admitting they are surprised by how easy it actually is to get along with Hana. Hana feels embarrassed hearing how easy she is to read, but a small smile still forms on her face. She calls each of the girls by their first names and sincerely thanks them for inviting her today, admitting she had fun. The girls immediately react in shock and ask her to say their names again, but Hana quickly turns away and pretends not to hear them. Even so, she quietly smiles to herself. Then the girls notice a photographer taking commemorative pictures for visitors at the viewing deck, so the four of them happily decide to take a photo together to end the day. On the day of their training camp, Spica and the others look out the train window as Mount Selene finally comes into view. Hana explains that the mountain can experience all 4 seasons at once. Instead of fearing the camp, Spica finds herself growing excited. They arrive at the inn where they will be staying, and Kieran immediately comments that the place looks shabby. Spica recalls that Kieran comes from royalty, which would explain his standards. Kieran informs her that he heard they will be moving as covens throughout the training camp, so he warns her not to get in his way. Spica feels her blood boil at the insult, but before she can respond, Hana walks up to Kieran and calmly tells him he is actually the slow one among them because he was swallowed by a griffin during the exam. Before an argument can break out, Tarf comes running over and immediately scolds Kieran for being rude. He even pushes Kieran's head down to apologize. Tarf then offers Spica and Hana snacks, explaining that Kieran is just awkward and actually wants to be friends with everyone. Claude soon calls his coven over because training is about to begin. Spica tells him that she is genuinely excited for the camp and is determined to improve as much as possible during her time there. Claude smiles at her enthusiasm, but his expression quickly shifts into that of a strict instructor. Spica spends the next hour running around the training field, desperately defending herself and dodging attacks. Eventually, she collapses onto the ground from exhaustion. Claude walks over and asks where all the spirit she showed earlier has gone. Spica gets irritated and demands a break since they have been casting magic continuously for over an hour. Claude explains that none of them is allowed to rest until they defeat 10 opponents each. Kieran complains that the enemies are far too strong. Spica drops onto the ground again, admitting that she is almost completely out of mana. To everyone's surprise, Claude suddenly picks her up and throws her directly into a nearby lake. Once she recovers from the betrayal, she notices that she feels strangely refreshed. Claude explains that the lake naturally restores mana. Kieran complains that he wants actual rest rather than restored mana, and Yoon tries to convince Spica to agree with him. Spica considers it because she hates the feeling of constantly draining her mana reserves. However, she remembers how frustrated she felt after failing the midterm exam. Determination fills her eyes as she boldly declares that she will defeat any number of opponents thrown at her. She tells Kieran that he is free to quit if he wants, but she intends to earn an S rank in the finals. Out of stubborn pride, he decides to continue training as well, not wanting Hana or Spica to outshine him. Claude smiles as the rest of the students follow Spica's example. Even while exhausted, they continue fighting. Whenever they run low on mana, they simply return to the lake before diving back into training. Because they can recover endlessly, they eventually manage to defeat the required number of opponents. Claude stamps their training cards and announces that they have completed his section of the camp. According to Claude, there are a total of 7 teachers participating in the training camp. To complete the camp, they must clear every teacher's training course. They head to Betelgeuse's area, where Betelgeuse explains that his test focuses on knowledge of the 12 zodiac signs. To pass, students must answer 6 questions correctly in a row. To make things harder, he activates his Aquarius magic and creates a steep, slippery slope. As they struggle to keep their footing, he casually informs them that if even one person slips, everyone must start over. Betelgeuse calls on Spica first. Before asking his question, he mocks how ugly she looks while desperately running uphill. He then asks for the name of the goddess of fertility. Remembering one of Claude's lessons before starting class in Diana, Spica answers Demeter. Betelgeuse confirms that she is correct. The others answer successfully as well until Liwei's turn arrives. Unfortunately, Liwei has fallen asleep while running, which causes her to miss her chance to answer. After another attempt, the entire coven finally passes. Next comes Polaris' training. Her challenge is simple since all they have to do is attack her and make her suffer. Hana immediately understands the assignment and poisons Polaris. Spica worries for a moment, but Hana says that Polaris has no intention of defending herself. Polaris confirms this and explains that her Capricorn magic allows her to absorb the effects of other people's spells. Spica attacks next with Anima, and Polaris reacts just as enthusiastically. Iway has trouble casting something strong. Kieran's magic feels like a ticklish breeze, while Capella simply slaps Polaris across the face. The one who had the hardest time was Tarf, since he did not want to harm anyone. Eventually, the entire coven earns another stamp. Their next stop is Procyon's boot camp. Unlike the previous tests, Procyon conducts a counseling session. Using his magic, he reads the thoughts of Claude's coven. Unfortunately for him, he immediately discovers that most of the coven finds him boring. Iway even spends part of the session chewing on a mushroom. Procyon is moved to tears by this. He ends his session by telling the students what he learned about them. He tells Spica that she possesses a strong sense of justice and should continue walking her current path. He tells Hannah that she has a kind heart and is fiercely loyal toward her friends. Procyon finds Capella to be too serious, but notes that she possesses excellent leadership qualities. Tarf is meddlesome yet genuinely caring. Procyon reveals that Kieran hides tremendous anxiety behind his arrogance and uses boasting to conceal his cowardice. He advises him to acknowledge his weaknesses. Kieran immediately explodes in anger and attempts to attack him. Finally, Procyon identifies Iway as the most concerning student because she lacks any real desire to learn magic. He advises her to find a goal worth pursuing. When Iway offers no response, Procyon worries he was too harsh. Then Capella slaps Iway, exposing that she was just asleep. With that, they receive another stamp and finally return to the inn. That evening, the girls relax in the hot springs. Spica asks Iway why she decided to attend Diana Academy. Iway honestly replies that Capella invited her and claimed that magic was fun. Capella reveals that they have been childhood friends for years. She explains that Iway has always been lazy, so she feels responsible for watching over her. Iway argues that she dislikes school because it is an endless cycle of studying and training. She would rather spend her days relaxing. She dislikes being told what to do and wants to enjoy life at her own pace. Capella immediately scolds her for being naive. Before long, the two are standing in the hot spring arguing about who is correct. Spica stares at them in amazement while Hannah panics. Later, Hannah and Spica feel more exhausted than refreshed. As they walk to their rooms, they are surprised to spot Capella speaking privately with Claude in the hallway. Claude apologizes for making Capella join the camp despite passing the exam, but Capella assures him that she doesn't mind. She explains that she wants to look after Iway and hopes the training camp will help motivate her. To her, Iway is the most talented witch in their entire coven. Spica and Hannah find themselves touched by her words. However, their attention is suddenly drawn to something approaching the inn from outside. Professor Pegasus bursts through a window in spectacular fashion. He flamboyantly introduces himself to Hannah and Spica, who immediately conclude that he may be the strangest professor in the academy. Soon afterward, Pegasus gathers all the students outside the inn and announces that his training will focus on understanding the essence of cross magic. Kieran and Tarf recognize the subject immediately. Pegasus calls out to his troupe and several performers suddenly appear. After commanding the students' attention, he activates cross magic with one of his partners. As they dance gracefully across the grass, beautiful flowers begin blooming wherever they step. Spica watches in amazement, thrilled to see the potential of Virgo magic. Pegasus then changes partners several times, demonstrating how the flowers differ depending on who he is paired with. Spica's eyes shine with excitement as she wants to learn magic like his. Pegasus then starts his training. Casting a spell called Judgment Rose, he summons rose buds above the students. He announces that they will be dancing and explains that the roses will bloom only when a partnership is truly strong. To pass his training, the students must continue switching partners within their coven until every possible partnership causes a rose to bloom. The magic causes Spica and Hannah to become one pair, so Spica offers her hand to Hannah. She feels confident they can make it work due to their midterms. Hannah immediately complains that dancing is embarrassing. Even so, she takes Spica's hand. The moment they attempt their first step, both girls trip and fall over. They begin playfully arguing with one another, only for Kieran to start mocking them. Spica notices that Kieran is wearing a dress and points it out. Red-faced, Kieran blames Pegasus' magic for his appearance. He grabs Tarf and begins dancing around the field with surprising elegance. Spica is genuinely impressed, but Hannah notices that Tarf is practically being dragged. The rose floating above them is rapidly wilting despite their impressive dance. Pegasus explains that the roses reflect the emotional distance between partners. The same problem affects Capella and Iway. Pegasus tells them that they must focus on understanding one another. They need to look into each other's eyes, learn what their partners are truly feeling, and dance with genuine passion. The students reluctantly take his words to heart. Claude's coven is able to make their first pairs pass since all their roses bloom. They all switch partners and attempt again. After nearly 5 exhausting hours, every partnership successfully blooms a rose. When the training concludes, Spica approaches Pegasus and reveals that she also possesses Virgo magic. She eagerly asks if she can someday create cross magic as beautiful as his. Pegasus immediately tells her no. He explains that his magic is his own masterpiece and Spica must paint her own canvas. If she masters cross magic, it may even become possible for her to use other zodiac magics. Before she can ask more questions, a rope ladder suddenly hits her. Pegasus grabs it and begins ascending into the sky. Before he disappears completely, he calls out that he looks forward to seeing the fruits of her efforts in the future. Claude, now back in his cat form, approaches Spica, who crouches down to talk to him. Claude remarks that Pegasus consistently produces the top-performing students and says it appears Spica has learned something important from him. Spica shares that she wants to grow closer to the rest of her coven and meet even more people. Although the training camp has been difficult, she finds herself genuinely excited. Claude smirks as his thoughts drift toward tomorrow's instructor. Traditionally, this is the point where many students end up eliminated. Still, Claude finds himself strangely confident in the growth of his coven. Meanwhile, in a nearby town, a mysterious girl named Ark finds herself in front of thugs. The men comment on how cute she looks and attempt to approach her. Before they can get any closer, however, Regal effortlessly gets rid of them. Ark playfully scolds him for interfering. Regal reminds her that the men were clearly trying to take advantage of her. Regal then relays a message from their boss. Their next assignment is to locate Spica. At the mention of her name, Ark's eyes light up with excitement. One day during the training camp, Claude's coven, along with several others, begins Hercules' boot camp. Hercules announces that his training will involve competing against other covens. He calls it the survival magical game where two teams will face off against one another. For safety, Hercules distributes special badges infused with his steel magic. He explains that each badge can block a single attack. However, once a badge shatters, that student is immediately eliminated from the game. Capella quickly understands the implication, as it means everyone can only take one hit before being knocked out. Hercules then raises the stakes even further. If a team wins, they automatically pass his training. If they lose, however, they will be forced to attend a full week of his personal boot camp, which lasts 24 hours a day at his house. Hercules announces that the first match will be between Claude Coven and Hercules Coven. Capella notices that the other professors are watching from a nearby cliff. Because they are representing Claude's coven, she tells her classmates that losing is not an option. Soon, Cornet and the rest of Hercules' coven approach them. Cornet comments on how terrible Claude's students looked while dancing the previous evening before introducing himself and his teammates. Lowering his voice, he tells Capella that she must be just like him, a leader forced to carry a group of hopeless classmates. He points out that she already passed the exam and only attended the camp to improve her grades, just as he did. Capella immediately grows irritated and starts walking away. Unfortunately, she overhears him mocking Yue. Cornet remarks that Yue is little more than an ornament since she never seems to do anything. To his surprise, Yue doesn't appear offended at all. In fact, she casually replies that being an ornament sounds nice. Before the conversation can continue, Hercules interrupts and calls the leaders forward to choose their starting locations on the map. Cornet tells Claude Coven to make the first pick. Capella selects an area filled with mushrooms. Cornet chooses the forest near the mountain's base. A teleportation spell begins glowing beneath everyone's feet. Hercules informs them that fireworks will signal the beginning of the match. Moments later, the students are teleported to their designated starting areas. Once they arrive, the group begins discussing Cornet. Tarf warns everyone that Cornet is an A-class student. He personally witnessed Cornet manipulating other students during previous examinations. Capella dismisses the warning and confidently declares that they should simply crush him. She then announces that she will be taking command and promises to lead them to a decisive victory. A firework explodes overhead, signaling the start of the match. Cornet sends Raz ahead to scout Claude Coven. Using his magic, he maintains contact with her and can even see through her eyes. Through Raz, he watches Capella discussing strategies with her teammates. In his opinion, she already made two mistakes. First, she selected her starting point before he did. Second, she chose an open, flat area. Soon, he watches Claude's coven split up. To him, separating is foolish. Earlier, he had dispatched his own teammates in pairs with orders to eliminate Claude Coven one member at a time. Soon afterwards, Saurian and Marfak spot Spica by herself. As they approach, Spica acts nervous for a moment before suddenly smirking at them. A series of explosions erupts around the area. To their shock, the rest of Claude Coven emerges from hiding. Capella reveals that she anticipated Cornet's thought process from the beginning. She knew he would assume she was foolish for choosing such an open area. Capella expected him to send scouts, so she deliberately had the group split up temporarily before secretly regrouping. Tarf used cancer magic to create realistic fake rocks that concealed their positions. Spica helped make the disguises look convincing. Capella explains that the entire strategy was designed to lure smaller enemy groups into an ambush. Marfak becomes furious and launches an attack. Capella intercepts the spell and immediately destroys his badge. Seeing herself completely surrounded, Saurian raises her hands and forfeits. Watching from afar, Cornet is baffled at how things turned out. He admits that he underestimated the leader of Claude's coven. Raz asks what they should do next. Cornet calmly replies that he already knows his opponent's greatest weakness. Later, Claude Coven decides to discuss strategy by a riverbank. Away immediately asks if she can take a nap. Capella scolds her for not taking the competition seriously and assigns her to keep watch while everyone else rests. Away finds the task bothersome. She even starts to think that getting eliminated might be preferable. To her surprise, Spica suddenly voices those exact thoughts beside her. Spica confesses that she also dislikes training, which Away finds hard to believe. Curious, she asks why Spica works so hard every day. Spica answers that she has a goal. Away quietly admits that she doesn't. Spica suggests that goals don't necessarily have to be for oneself. Away struggles to understand since working hard for someone else sounds exhausting. As she thinks about it, her mind drifts back to childhood, when she first learned magic alongside Capella. Hungry, she notices an apple sitting near a bush. Meanwhile, the rest of Claude's coven continues discussing strategy. They hear Away approaching and prepare to greet her. Instead, they watch as Away suddenly destroys Spica's badge before smashing everyone else's except Capella's. Capella manages to stop her and immediately points her wand forward. She demands to know who the imposter is. At that moment, Cornet and the rest of his coven emerge from the bushes with Away trapped with them. Cornet explains that he realized Claude Coven always traveled together, making direct attacks impossible. So he abducted the real Away instead. Knowing how easily she would fall for food, he laced an apple with anesthetic. After scanning Away's appearance with magic, they had Raz transform herself into a perfect imitation. Without hesitation, Capella throws her wand toward Away. Away catches it and instantly casts a smokescreen. While Hercules' coven is distracted, Capella grabs Away and runs. The two leap into the river and disappear downstream. Cornet quickly regains control of his team. He calmly remarks that Away will continue to be Capella's greatest weakness. Far away, Capella and Away finally emerge from the river. Capella immediately urges Away to keep moving, warning that Cornet's team could still be searching for them. As they travel, guilt begins weighing heavily on Away's mind. Because of her mistake, most of their coven was eliminated. Cornet's words echo inside her head, and she begins to think that she really is useless. She begins to consider that Capella might even view her in a similar way now. Deep down, she admits to herself that the only reason she enrolled at Diana Academy was because she wanted to stay beside Capella. Capella notices that Away has stopped moving and immediately urges her forward. Away hesitantly asks if Capella is mad at her. Capella honestly confirms that she is, but they need to work together if they want any chance of defeating the opposing coven. Capella suddenly notices a fire spell hurtling toward Away. Without hesitation, she pushes Away out of the way and shields her from the attack. Capella's badge activates and shatters into pieces, which means Capella has been eliminated. Cornet and the rest of his coven reveal themselves from their hiding spots. In his eyes, sacrificing herself for Away is ridiculous. He openly calls Away the dead weight of Claude Coven. Away also quietly agrees with him. Capella immediately argues back. She insists that she would never sacrifice herself for just anyone. If there is someone capable of defeating Hercules' coven alone, then it is Away. She tells Away that it is finally time to show everyone what she can really do because Capella knows exactly how talented she is. She admits that she has always looked up to Away. Away is stunned since this is the first time she has ever heard Capella say that. Cornet scoffs at Capella's opinion. He questions her intelligence because to him, Away is useless. Having lost all interest in taking things slowly, he orders Raz to eliminate Away. In that brief instant, Away remembers Spica's words. A massive wall of flames erupts from the ground, forcing everyone to retreat. The students stare in shock at the sheer power of the spell. Away decides that if there are people who believe in her, then she wants to live up to their expectations. The teachers watch from a magical projection. Even after witnessing the flames, most of them still believe Claude Coven will lose. Back on the battlefield, Cornet is visibly taken aback. However, he quickly regains his composure and orders Mossam to match Away's power. He knows his teammates can be foolish at times, but this group is exceptionally strong. Had they chosen a different path during the entrance exams, they likely would have passed. Mossam in particular is considered the top Ares magic user in their grade. Mossam unleashes Prominence Blow. To everyone's disbelief, Away casts the very same spell, but her fireball is even larger. The flames completely consume Mossam's attack before crashing into his badge and eliminating him. Everyone is shocked by the overwhelming amount of mana Away has been hiding all this time. Watching from afar, Procyon comments that with mana reserves like that, Away may actually be among the strongest students in her class. The other students are equally stunned. No one expected something like this from Away. Back in the battle, Cornet immediately orders his remaining teammates to surround her and attack from every direction. Away simply launches herself into the air using jets of flame. Kujum sees an opening and moves in for an attack. Away accelerates with another burst of fire. instantly closing the distance and destroying his badge. Raz switches to close-range combat and repeatedly attempts to destroy Iwei's badge. She manages to keep up thanks to Cornet shouting predictions and instructions from the sidelines. Watching from afar, the remaining members of Claude's coven begin to worry. Hana, however, calmly reassures them since Iwei does not look worried at all. For the first time in years, Iwei finds herself genuinely enjoying magic. The excitement of fighting a powerful opponent makes her heart race. More importantly, she enjoys fighting for her friends. Her attacks gradually force Raz backward until she is just in front of Cornet. The moment both opponents occupy the same space, Iwei unleashes her strongest spell. Countless blazing spheres descend across the entire area. Thankfully, Hercules' badges absorb the damage. Unfortunately for Cornet and Raz, that means both of their badges shatter simultaneously. Iwei smiles, then she casually remarks that she is hungry. The announcement of Claude Coven's victory echoes throughout the battlefield. Spica immediately joins the cheers of celebration. Claude proudly boasts about how amazing all of his students are, causing teachers to notice just how attached he has become to his coven. Capella feels especially relieved. For the first time in a long while, Iwei looks like she is genuinely enjoying magic again. She remembers when they were children and how much Iwei loved practicing spells. Everything changed when their mentor noticed Iwei's extraordinary talent. The expectations placed upon her became increasingly strict. Eventually, Iwei stopped enjoying magic altogether and began deliberately holding herself back. Now it looks like she has rediscovered what made magic fun in the first place. Capella happily wraps an arm around her shoulders. Iwei admits that Spica was right. Sometimes having a goal connected to other people is enough motivation. Fighting for Capella and the rest of the coven made her want to win. She also admits that the battle was fun because her opponents were strong enough to challenge her. Capella immediately assumes this means Iwei will start working hard all the time from now on. However, Iwei has no intention of working hard for everything. One evening at the end of Hercules' exam, some of the younger professors have a drink and talk about how well the covens performed in real combat. They are aware that the students are probably fast asleep by now since actual combat is much more demanding than their usual lessons. They also discuss how Claude became a professor at the age of 17. Claude tries to avoid talking about the past, but Betelgeuse wants to talk about the night of the cultist attack. He wants to hear Claude's reasoning for suddenly leaving Diana, even when backup arrived. Almost everyone believed that he died that day. However, he returned and acted as if nothing had happened, so Betelgeuse really wants an explanation. Claude is about to say something, but Polaris suddenly shoves beer down his mouth since she thinks Claude has not drunk enough. Claude stops Polaris and reminds her that she needs to be mindful about when she should stop drinking. Polaris only swoons at his cold stare. Claude gets annoyed and asks Procyon to switch with him. Betelgeuse suddenly feels like he will not be getting any answers from Claude tonight. On the last day of the training camp, Deneb, the school's nurse, greets them and thanks them all for working so hard. As the students wonder what is in store for them, Deneb suddenly asks them to remove their clothes. Spica and the girls are in the changing room, discussing how it is slightly disappointing that they only have to go for a health checkup on the final day. Iwei slowly pokes her head out first, then suddenly bursts completely out and flexes, mentioning that all her muscle pain is gone. The girls are shocked by Iwei's sudden burst of energy since it is completely out of character for her. Spica's name is then called and she becomes worried about what will happen to her. Lying on the examination bed, Deneb mentions that she will perform a checkup and then heal any injuries and fatigue Spica incurred during the training camp. Deneb explains that her Taurus magic can do all that and strengthen bodies as well. As Deneb begins her spell, Spica wonders if healing magic is similar to her rebirth magic. She's jolted out of her thoughts when she feels an electrifying sensation course through her body. Once that passes, she feels warmth and her muscles suddenly relax. She does not understand the feeling, but she allows herself to enjoy the sensation. In just a few moments, Deneb tells Spica that she is done and that Spica is perfectly healthy. Deneb tries to explain that she will be in a trance-like state for a short while, but Spica is too happy. Deneb does not tell Spica, but she finds it odd that Spica has no injuries from the training camp. She checked Spica's internal mana during the exam and found its flow odd, as if Spica had another supply. She is suspicious of Spica, but Spica does not notice at all. Later, Spica admires her stamp card because she managed to clear all the professors' boot camps. She and her coven are thankful that the tiring camp has ended and that they can return to their own dorms. Claude then calls them all to get ready. Spica runs up to him, showing off her card and asking for his praise. However, Claude tells her that he will only praise her once she passes an actual exam. The members of Claude Coven study their interaction and begin to suspect that Spica and Claude might be involved. Hana refuses to believe it, so she grabs Spica and insists that they pack their bags. She fixes Claude with a hateful stare, believing he might be up to no good. As Hana drags Spica back to the group, Spica notices that her luggage is gone. She thinks she might have left it in her room. Claude tells her that the train is leaving in 10 minutes and that she will be left behind if she does not return in time. After checking her room, she heads outside again because it is not there. She then sees her luggage hanging from a tree. She heads over to retrieve it and checks the items inside. Suddenly, Ark greets her from behind. Spica stands and greets her, asking if she is a local. Ark finds the question funny because she finds the mountain disgusting. Spica is in awe because she finds Ark very beautiful. Offhandedly, Ark mentions that she was the one who threw Spica's bag. Spica is puzzled and asks why she would do that. The atmosphere around Ark becomes dark and she suddenly admits that she wants to kidnap Spica. At the threat, Spica readies her wand, but Ark is too fast and her snakes immediately bite and trap Spica. Ark slowly makes her way towards Spica and says that Wriggle wants Spica alive so she cannot have much fun with her. Ark realizes that she has not introduced herself, so she reveals her name to Spica. She then tells Spica that she will be taking her rebirth magic. Spica struggles against the snakes and asks what Ark is planning to do to her. Ark is impressed because most people would not even be able to talk due to the snake venom. She tells Spica that she is going to bring her to the cult. Spica tells her that there is nothing special about her rebirth magic because it only amplifies healing. Ark laughs because it is clear that Spica does not know how strong her magic truly is. She even explains that only one person can use it. If mastered, the power would be enough to overthrow the nation. Spica does not like to think of using her magic for something so evil, and it causes one of the snakes to coil tighter around her. Ark says she is getting annoyed by Spica's reasoning. The horn of the train can be heard, signaling that it is about to leave. She has her snakes tighten their hold on Spica, and Spica feels herself panic and even lose hope. Suddenly, Ark has the urge to hurt Spica even more and wonders if rebirth magic can fix Spica afterwards so that her boss will not discover that she was too rough with her. Spica feels herself lose consciousness, but before she does, Hana's Scorpio magic attacks Ark. Ark finally notices that Claude Coven is there and even Claude has arrived to free Spica. Claude tries to gauge how badly Spica is hurt, and Spica tells him that Ark is after her rebirth magic. Ark asks accusingly why Claude Coven did not board the train. Hana says they would never leave a friend behind. Ark finds them annoying, mentioning that she needs Spica, otherwise Wriggle will get mad at her. She tries to earn their pity, but Hana accuses her of talking nonsense because it is clear from the emblem on her skin that she is a cultist. Ark says she hates that name and says they are a noble group and that they are called the Order of the Black Serpent. She uses Ophiuchus magic, a type of magic that surprises Claude Coven since they are not familiar with it. Claude manages to redirect the path of the magic with his own. As his coven feels relieved, Claude takes a look at the creatures that were summoned. He notices that the spell has stolen the life force of the nearby flowers. He can tell this is probably forbidden magic, so the battle will not be easy. Ark then taunts Claude, saying he has not changed much. She moves her parasol so her face can be seen, and Claude recognizes her. Spica tries to ask if he knows Ark, and Claude confirms that he does. He mentions that Ark was even part of his coven. Spica is shocked that one of his former students would join the cultists. Ark starts moving and mentions that she now has a new mentor whom she finds annoying. However, she believes Wriggle is powerful, possibly even more powerful than Claude. It is only then that Claude realizes that he is being held at point-blank range by Wriggle, who reprimands Ark for being too chatty. Wriggle then says that their group plans on purging anyone who goes against them. They both release magic at the same time, but before Claude can follow up with another attack, he notices that Wriggle has disappeared. He covers his bleeding neck and turns back to see that Wriggle has moved to stand behind Ark. Wriggle scolds Ark for messing around instead of bringing Spica back right away. Ark tries to deny that her old habits are showing, but Wriggle knows better and mentions how she needs to be more rational so she can complete her missions more efficiently. He then turns his attention back to Claude and tells everyone that Claude was actually defeated by their group years ago. He also finds the current Claude Coven to have mediocre skills, so he thinks he can handle everyone quickly. He prepares a spell, and before anyone can react, he disappears. He reappears directly behind Spica, but Claude sees his move and manages to counter it. He tells his students that Wriggle can move freely through shadows. Spica feels guilty because Claude already used up a lot of magic just to save her. Claude notices the uneasy look on her face and promises Spica that he will not let any of them get harmed. Wriggle claps his hands and compliments Claude for caring about his students so much. He also mentions that he can clearly see that Claude's students are inspired by him. He finds the bond Claude shares with his students remarkable. He begins speaking with a lot of vigor, believing Claude to be the ideal teacher. Wriggle has an almost obsessed and crazed look in eyes. Ark recognizes the look and understands that it means Claude and his students are finished. Wriggle wipes his mouth and apologizes because he is weak when it comes to love and friendship. In fact, he yearns for such feelings but understands that the world is filled with lies and deceit. He wants to see if Claude truly cares for his students and is willing to lay down his life for them. Suddenly, Wriggle summons all the shadows in the area and creates a giant serpent that he uses to attack the students. Claude saves Charon from getting seriously injured but gets hit by the fangs that line the serpent's body. He warns everyone not to get hit by any of them. He studies the size of the serpent and wonders if Regal plans to destroy the entire forest with that spell. From a safe distance, Ark notices that Regal is more out of control than she is, which is exactly what their boss warned her about before they set out on the mission. Their boss advised her not to go near Regal once his obsession is triggered. He even cited an example where Regal had devoured his own family, claiming it was part of confirming everyone's bond. Watching the fight below, Ark still finds Regal amazing. Below her, Claude Coven struggles to find a way to defeat the serpent. They all freeze when the serpent's head comes crashing toward them, so Claude uses greater magic to send the serpent and the two cultists away. When the smoke clears, all his students are amazed by the power of his spell. Spica thanks him for saving them. However, Claude mentions that his attack is not enough to defeat the two cultists. He is aware that he is almost out of mana, having used greater magic just to protect them. He instructs his coven to run down the mountain and get help. Everyone is puzzled by his instructions because he is essentially telling them to abandon him. Before he can explain further, he suddenly transforms into a cat in front of everyone. Everyone is shocked, especially Charon, who struggles to wrap his head around the situation since the reality that their lives could end is now right in front of him. Spica notices that her coven is stricken with fear, so she decides to apologize, mentioning that all of this is her fault. Remembering Claude's words, she gathers her courage and mentions that Claude believes they can get out of this situation together, so they need to work as a team. She tries to lead everyone in a group cheer, but they can clearly see her hands shaking. Still, everyone realizes that they need to return to Diane alive, so they all join Spica in the cheer, hype themselves up. The Claude Coven begins sprinting to the station with Iwei on constant lookout. Spica worries about what to tell her coven mates since they currently think Claude turning into a cat is due to the enemy's magic. She feels like telling the actual truth will only cause everyone to panic. Earlier, she tried to use her rebirth magic on Claude, but nothing happened, reinforcing the theory that it can only be used once a day. However, it looks like her plant magic is still active. Meanwhile, Tarf asks Chiron if he is okay because he notices that Chiron looks pale. Chiron gets annoyed by Tarf's constant nagging. Tarf apologizes for failing to protect Chiron earlier. He feels he has failed his sworn duty as part of the Aradia family's guard. Chiron, though clearly shaken, tries to lighten the situation by teasing Tarf for being scared. Spica overhears everything and asks if Tarf is really a guard. Tarf confirms and says looking after Chiron is his job. Hannah scoffs and pities him for being overprotective of such a bratty prince. Chiron hears the insult and decides to run ahead out of frustration. Tarf gives Spica an uneasy smile and says that Claude also called him overprotective. It happened when he had just received his rank at school. Claude said that he babied Chiron too much and should focus on himself instead while trusting Chiron to handle things. Otherwise, neither of them will grow. Thinking about Claude's words, Tarf wonders if it is something he should seriously consider. After some time, the Claude Coven can finally see the train. Spica feels relieved, believing they can escape without any more problems. Meanwhile, Regal and Ark emerge from Shadow Snake. Ark complains because she feels they have lost their chance to kidnap Spica. Regal reminds her to at least be thankful to him first for saving her. After she gives her thanks, Regal tells Ark that the students cannot escape by train because he did a little something at the station. At the station, the Claude Coven sees that the tunnels are completely wrecked, preventing trains from leaving or arriving. The group tries to think of their options, with Capella telling them that running to the base on foot is a bad idea since it is almost nighttime. Chiron then suggests using his magic to fly away. However, he admits that he can only either fly by himself or carry one other person. Chiron quickly explains that he plans to fly to town and call for reinforcements. At first, they think it is a good idea until Chiron admits that he can only fly for 10 minutes, so he actually cannot make it down the mountain. Hannah and Capella look at him in disdain. Chiron himself starts feeling useless after realizing the drawback. Spica asks if their only option now is to fight. Capella urges everyone to hide for now so they can think of a plan, but then she notices Regal just beyond the trees. She tries to tell everyone to run, but he suddenly appears behind her. Iwei is quick to attack, but Regal sends one of his snakes after her, and it drains away her power. Spica uses a spell to pull the snake away and stands protectively in front of Iwei. Hannah and Chiron join her at the front just as Art points out that Claude is actually the black cat in Spica's arms. Tar suddenly uses his magic to create a pyramid-like structure to trap Ark and Regal, believing he finally protected his coven. However, Hannah points out that Regal can use shadows to travel. Tarf shares that he has a theory that Regal's shadow manipulation only works when he can see shadows. However, he is well aware that his magic might not hold for long. Inside the structure, Regal is impressed by the spell, even if Ark hardly shares his enthusiasm. He prepares something sinister, promising to release it soon. Back outside, Iwe struggles through the pain, and Capella admits that she honestly thinks the only way out is for Claude to return to his human form. Spica feels helpless because her mana has not fully recovered enough to use rebirth magic. She thinks about everything she learned during the training camp. Then she remembers the saline water from the first day. Spica says that they need to bring Claude to the saline water so he can regain his strength. Capella thinks it is risky to rely on that plan, but Spica insists that it will work. Capella decides to trust her idea, but points out that the saline water is uphill and will take about 30 minutes to reach on foot. Kieran offers to fly Spica there, saying he can make the trip in 10 minutes. Hana and Spica give him uncertain looks. Capella explains to Kieran that their enemy is targeting Spica, so flying her there is not the only concern. Kieran says that he is aware of that and even admits that he is terrified. He shares that he cannot guarantee he can keep Spica safe, but after being saved by Claude, he wants to be useful to the Coven. Tarf places a hand on Kieran's shoulder, saying they should go with Kieran's plan because he believes Kieran can do it. Kieran is shocked since he assumes Tarf would be against the idea. Tarf explains that he admires Kieran's determination to keep moving forward despite his fears. He knows Kieran has been thinking of an escape plan for everyone this whole time, so he believes Kieran can pull it off. Capella apologizes and admits that she simply wanted to test his resolve. Hana threatens Kieran not to abandon Spica. Spica offers him her hand and tells Kieran not to worry too much because she can protect herself. Kieran takes her hand and uses his magic. He sends them into the sky toward the direction of the saline water. Tarf watches them leave, silently wishing them luck. He then turns his attention back to the rest of his coven and says that their duty is to make sure their enemies do not leave the area. Inside the barrier, Regal smiles. The coven surrounds Tarf's barrier, and suddenly another snake-like creature bursts out. Capella attacks it, and once it disappears, Tarf repairs the breach. The group starts feeling confident in their plan since no one should be able to use greater magic continuously. However, a real snake suddenly attacks Hana. The group finds themselves surrounded by snakes, and the distraction gives Regal enough time to attack Tarf directly. Through the breach, Regal smiles wickedly at Tarf. High in the skies, Spica begins to worry about the rest of their coven. Kieran scolds her for doubting them. He then complains about how long the trip is taking since they still have not reached the springs and his flight time is almost up. Spica notices that his hands are quivering. Kieran gets embarrassed when she notices and finally breaks down because Spica still looks so calm. He admits that he assumed Spica was a loser just like him. Spica tells him that she is not calm at all, but she has to keep herself together if she wants to save everyone. At any rate, she is amused to see this side of Kieran because she always assumed he was just an arrogant prince. Kieran argues that he has to stay composed because he is a prince. His tone changes as he speaks about his older brother, saying that he could have overcome this crisis if he would have won here. He admits that he actually has a very low mana supply and that he probably only got into Diana because of his status. He tried to learn things other than magic, but royals with no talent for magic are doomed to be looked down upon. Spica has a feeling she's beginning to understand Kieran more. However, Kieran is too embarrassed about revealing his inferiority complex to Spica. They then manage to spot the spring, which lifts their spirits. However, they suddenly hear Ark nearby. Spica looks at Ark in fear and asks what happened to the others. Ark admits that they are facing their demise at the hands of Regal. The thought of their friends getting defeated strikes fear into their hearts. Ark's snake swats them to the ground, but the Spica is quick enough to use Animon to break their fall. However, Ark's words are clearly breaking Spica's spirit. Kieran tells her that he does not believe a word Ark says. Spica decides to follow Kieran's example, continue believing in their friends, and keep moving toward the saline water. Kieran begins moving but is attacked by Ark again. Ark finds his trembling form amusing and teases him. Spica tries attacking Ark to get her away from Kieran, but Ark easily deflects the attacks. Kieran is in shock from how painful the wound is and is about to give up. He then hears Spica cry out and turns to find her being lifted by a snake. Kieran tries to will himself to move, but finds himself frozen in fear. He then hears Spica tell him to run, and that makes him feel guilty because he is the one who is supposed to be protecting her. Finally, he regains feeling in his legs and begins to stand. He feels himself drawing courage from the people who believe in him. Violent winds begin stirring because of his magic. Art believes he is trying to blow her away with his spell and teases that all his wind can do is make her skirt flutter. However, Kieran uses the wind to control the broken branches and launches them at the snake holding Spica, releasing her from its grip. Spica is surprised by Kieran's quick thinking. Kieran explains that he needs to be smart with how he uses his magic because of his low mana pool. He tells Ark not to underestimate him since he is the second prince of the Araya family. Spica can already see the spring, so now all they have to do is get past Ark, who clearly has no intention of making it easy for them. Ark feels sick with herself for being outsmarted by a weak witch like Kieran. To her, this mission has not gone as perfectly as she wanted, and that irritates her. Summoning her strength, she creates a snake made of black flames. Kieran tries to fly to gain a better vantage point, but the snake quickly attacks him. Spica is able to pull him away in time, but some of the flames latch onto his coat. The flames are not hot, but he suddenly feels his mana draining away, so he quickly removes his coat. Before them, they see the forest being engulfed by the black flames, but Spica wants to charge through them to reach the spring. However, Ark attacks them from the sky, forcing them back once again. Spica is amazed by the level of Ark's power, but her mind keeps searching for a way to get past her. Ark offers to spare Kieran's life in exchange for Spica's obedience. She then holds Claude up and says she will not allow him to escape his fate. Spica is shocked and realizes that Ark had swooped in and snatched Claude from her arms. She demands Claude back, trying to understand why Ark hates him so much despite once belonging to the Claude Coven. Ark tells Spica that Claude only wanted to use her rebirth magic in the past. Seeing that Spica is confused, Ark explains that people are not born with rebirth magic, it is acquired. Ark tells Spica that she will probably suffer the same fate because Claude is also using her to acquire rebirth magic. Ark is convinced that Claude is a fake and does not truly care about Spica at all. Spica feels her resolve begin to crumble, but Kieran shouts at her not to believe a single thing Ark says. He reminds Spica that Claude saved them, so that must mean he genuinely cares about them. Spica slowly rises and tells Ark that she already knows Claude is using her, but she is also using him to become a first-class mage. She tells Ark that she has no idea what happened between her and Claude in the past, but she will continue to place her trust in him. Spica sends out vines to distract Ark as she pushes through the flames to grab Claude. Ark pushes her away, but Kieran catches her before she falls. Spica gives Kieran a determined look and says that she needs his help to defeat Ark. Ark finds their determination laughable and sends her envy snake after them. In response, Spica and Kieran decide to use cross magic. Thanks for watching. Subscribe now and see what happens next.